Sonic the Hedgehog 1 was a major success for Sega, and they really needed it. Nintendo had a giant foothold in the gaming market, and now they were able to compete with them like no other gaming company was able to do. And Sonic was the main reason why they were able to do so, especially in the Western market, where now the Genesis was outselling a Nintendo console, just because of this one blue hedgehog. But all things weren't going too well because the lead designer on Sonic 1, Yuji Naka, decided to leave Sega out of didn't like the way it was being managed. So, luckily, though, he got hired by Sega of America for their new STI, Sega Technical Institute, trying to develop their own games in the West, because, you want to have, like, multiple different development teams. So some members of a Sonic team decided that they were going to develop the next sequel for Sonic the Hedgehog, being Sonic the Hedgehog 2, of course, which they had to wait 2 months for it to be announced they're going to do it. And Sega was like, wait, let's not do it. And they're like, oh yeah, we have to do this. Game's selling too much good. We need to do it right now. And they have 11 months to complete a sequel to Sonic 2, which is a really short amount of time, especially during those days. I mean, the games were smaller than what we have nowadays, but even then, it's still a ridiculous amount of time. Stuff you gotta iron out bugs and stuff like that. So yeah, now the new team is part of some Japanese developers and American developers who sometimes can't really understand each other because there's a language barrier. They now have to figure out how to make a sequel to Sonic 1 that's bigger and better in every way. So yeah, let's say they had their work cut out for them is an understatement. The first concept for Sonic 2 was to make a nice time travel story where Sonic goes back in time to stop the Eggman Empire from happening because he already took over in his timeline apparently. And he would go to the past, the present, the good future, and the bad future. Because of some time constraints, this idea got scrapped. However, if you can tell from the footage, is that this idea eventually did happen. You see, while a couple of Sonic team members went over to America to help the American developers make Sonic 2, the same team are working on their own sequel for Sonic the Hedgehog 1 for the now new peripheral from Genesis called the Sega CD, and that game eventually became known as Sonic CD. There's a bit of debate whether or not Sonic CD or Sonic 2 comes before first in the timeline, with Sonic Origins confirming that Sonic CD does take place before Sonic 2. We're looking at these games in like release date order, so it doesn't really matter. But however, Sonic CD and Sonic 2 are cut from the same cloth. They're originally conceptualized as the same game, though they're based off Sonic 1, and that's why some think of Sonic CD feel a little different than they do in a Sonic 2, for instance. A lot of the original ideas for the time travel are still in the game, as Hilltop Zone here, which shares some similarities to Emerald Hill Zone, was originally conceptualized as the past version of Green Hill Zone, as Emerald Hill Zone was originally called Green Hill Zone, for changing the name for obvious reasons. And you can kind of tell, I mean, the patterns of the terrain at the bottom of Sonic are basically the same, or in fact it's blue. So yeah, it's pretty interesting to see that the levels are conceptualized that way. Also, Oil Ocean Zone was originally going to be the future of Green Hill Zone, or the bad future at least, or the present. I'm not too sure which one it is, but that even though it looks nothing like it, it was supposed to be it. I mean, Green Hill Zone got overrun by oil. Green Hill Zone looks more like Sand Hill now. And our zones like Casino Night and Chemical Plant Zone were also conceptualized as part of this time travel plot before just ending up being normal in the final game, just a normal part of the level. The team decided what they should develop on in the next game to add new features. They wanted to emphasize more of Sonic speed, as the first game had a lot of parts where you slow down. They wanted to have a way to players to maintain more speed with new tools, and that tool eventually become known as the Spin Dash. Player holds down and one of their jump buttons, and Sonic will roll up into the ball, and they let go. Sonic will go max speed, basically, depending on how much the player hit the button. And it's a pretty great ability, meaning that if your player stops at one point, now they can just have an instant way of getting speed, but they have to be careful without getting shot while they're in the ball form or stuff like that. It's a very great feature. It makes stuff like those walls in Sonic 1 a lot easier to go through. Not that there's any of those walls. There's brick walls in Sonic 1 if you don't know. And yeah, it makes stuff that's a lot harder before, like this area, which you can use a spring, but you also can spin dash up that hill. Pretty neat. One of the scrapped ideas they're also going to use was an exact opposite. Basically, Sonic would, if you run into a wall, so he'd get knocked back. Awful idea, and it was scrapped pretty much immediately. One of the things that the team wanted to develop was a multiplayer mode, which was conceptualized for the first Sonic game, but because of time constraints, they couldn't really figure it out. Eventually, the idea of a split screen was used so that two players could race against each other, as well as adding a second player. And this is where we're going to talk about the new character introduced to Sonic 2. We got a brand new face running alongside Sonic. Yuji Naka wanted this second player to be a little different than Sonic. He wanted him to be cute, like this character Kitsune from this anime called Yurasuyo Yatsusuro. I probably messed up that pronunciation. But he's a little fox kid. So, like, yeah, he's like, we need to make a character that's similar to this. And they held a contest at STI to see who would win the character design. The contest ended with Yasushi Yamagachi, winning. I hope I said that right. And his concept was a little fox boy with two tails named Miles Power. And yeah, people thought this guy's cute. He's got little two tails. If you don't know, tails is based off of a nine-tails fox. A fox, this is in Japanese mythology. They get more wise with age. They get more tails. The ending with nine tails. You probably know about nine-tails foxes if you know anything about Japanese media because they're everywhere. But tails is basically a young one, so he only has two tails. Yeah, as you know, I'm calling it Tails, but his name is not Tails. It's Miles Power. Originally, they were like, Miles Power, I don't like the power. It's not supposed to be power, it's supposed to be cute, so they changed the power to Prower. Of course, Miles Power is based off miles per hour. And, yeah, eventually so the marketing team's like, Miles Power, it's okay, but we like the name Tails better. They actually made, Yamaguchi really mad, because he liked the name Miles. He's like, he had a fight with them, and said, okay, his legal name is Miles Power, but his nickname could be Tails, and they want Miles to show up in the game. So, yeah. The name will appear in the game, but no one ever calls him that. His name is just Tails. Like, quite literally. It's one of those things that no one ever mentions. Like the fact that Eggman's name is Ivo. People call him Robotic, but they never call him Ivo, you know? They have a concept for another scrapped character. This was Boomer the Turtle, the other proposed sidekick for Sonic, the only one that seems to have any known work about him. Obviously, they chose Tails because they originally wanted him to be a cute fox. It is kind of weird that a turtle, known to be slow, was working with Sonic, guy, the fastest thing alive. But yeah, he's supposed to fly, like some reason he's Gamera or something like that. It's not terrible, but at the same time, Tails works a lot better. It's kind of fun that his sidekick's like a little fox who wants to catch up with him. But yeah, this turtle guy needs to help get flipped over. Like, he seems too much of a liability to help Sonic. I know Tails is young, but he can keep up with Sonic. That's why Sonic keeps it around. I don't think Sonic would hang out with somebody who needs to at least have someone on his adventures that always needs to get picked up. You know what I mean? Don't be too sad, Boomer fans, because this character made a cameo in one of the Sonic 30th Anniversary comics. So if you like this turtle guy, well, he appears in the background. So there you go. Because of conflict between the Japanese and American team with their different work ethics, different hours and stuff like that, there was a lot of stuff that was scrapped because the two teams couldn't get to work that well together. They eventually did a lot in the game, but there's a lot of zones that are scrapped, much like the Hidden Palace zone. This zone actually would later be put back into Sonic 2 with the mobile ports and Sonic Origins versions, but for over 20 years, this thing was not part of Sonic 2. And even in the new versions, it is just a secret level area. The original idea for Hidden Palace is that it was a zone where Sonic could transform to Super Sonic and collecting the 7 Chaos Emeralds. And that was supposed to be where the Hub Reef did it, but eventually they scrapped this idea. There's also a lot of other zones that were scrapped, but they can still be found in the code of Sonic 2. Another zone is Wood Zone. This stage is not as complete as Hidden Palace Zone. According to Yuji Naka, they had 5 stages that were scrapped, and one of them was actually almost complete, but because of the memory constraints, they didn't have enough time to put it in the game. So it was complete, but they had to cut it just for the release schedule. It was kind of crazy, but you don't really tell when you're playing Sonic 2, but it is neat to see all these hidden zones that were here. Which looks pretty neat, actually. It doesn't look fully complete, but I like the concept. Next is Sand Shower Zone. You can tell by this picture, there's not a lot on this zone. Only we got one little blurry screenshot. Though, if you take good notice, you will notice that this zone looks very familiar to the future stage in Sonic Mania, known as Mirage Saloon. So yeah, this was eventually reused, but at the same time, it was scrapped. And the last scrapped zone was Cyber City Zone, also known as Genocide City. I don't know why they call it Genocide City. It was probably most likely a end-level zone, but this was probably the least interesting, or the fact that it has Genocide in its name, because it's very similar to Metropolis Zone for what it seems like a futuristic city that's a death trap, like final base Eggman. So yeah, it's nothing that we're missing out too much on. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 had a giant promotional campaign against it. The marketing for this thing was the biggest that any video game's ever had. It was on TV shows like Nickelodeon, and commercials were all over the place. They even had a launch day premiere, which is the first time ever in video game history. The game was originally released November 21st, 1992, but the rest of the world got it a couple days later, November 24th, 1992, first time international release, and they called this day Sonic Tuesday, since, it was on a Tuesday. And they had this giant marketing campaign. It's like, pre-order your game now. It was being hyped up. They had a Sonic mascot there. They had a bunch of 90s celebrities there that I don't know because I didn't grow up in the 90s. I was conceived in the 90s, not born in the 90s, alright? And they got all these guys who are like, this is the best game ever, handing out their games. And it ended up working because this game ended up being the best-selling game on the Genesis. And I think the best-selling Sonic game of all time, if I'm not I'm not mistaken. Look at that Sonic mascot. Also, was mistaken, it's the second best-selling jet escape with 7.55 million copies, which is pretty impressive for the time. Sonic 1 beat it, mostly because it's bundled with the console. But yeah, without bundling the console, it definitely sold the most.
Sega Genesis that comes with Sonic 1, you'll get Sonic 2 absolutely free. Sonic 2 handles stubborn stains, embarrassing bald spots, no problem. It even slices and dices, makes thousands of julienne fries. But wait, you can play it too. This free Sonic 2 is a $54.99 value. You get 2 Sonics for the price of 1. Sonic 2 fits easily into any tackle box. Made from a space-age polymer plastic for years of family fun. And pets love it too. Buy the Sega Genesis that comes with Sonic 1 and get Sonic 2 free. Act now.
Let's talk about the box art, because why not? Sonic 2 is the same thing with Sonic 1, where the Japanese and American box art differ completely. Let's talk about PAL right now, because PAL just copies whichever one it feels like until the Sonic 3. I'll talk about the PAL when it's different, alright? So yeah, the box art for Japanese is still great. I love it. They still use this style in Sonic stuff to this day, so it's great. We now have Tails and Sonic's names colliding on the cover. And of course, the reason why I'm showing this is because I had to read the promotional quote on the box. And it says, "Don't just sit there and waste your precious time. When you want to do something, do it right away. Do it when you can. It's only the way to live a life without regrets." Very inspirational. In North America and Europe too, we got this box art by Greg Martin, who did the other Sonic box arts and couldn't tell. And he adds buckles to Tails' shoes, looks kind of weird. But yeah, other than that, it's about the same. Sonic looks exactly the same he does in Sonic 1, like he always draws him. The most interesting thing is we got a giant 2, which looks great, but then we got this Eggman in the background with a beard crushing the 2 with black, soulless eyes. Like, what is going on there? You first look at it, you think it's just normal, then you realize, like, what is going on? This is a pretty iconic box art. It's great showcasing them. There's a threat looming behind them, but then again, like, what's going on with that Eggman portrayal? In fact, this is one of the main reasons why Eggman looks so weird in cartoons in America, because this is how he was drawn. People thought he must have black eyes, even though he has sunglasses, and his other weird stuff made him look weird. But I'm not going to talk about that right now, since it has nothing really to do with Sonic 2. Let's talk about some more new characters. This isn't a new character. This is the concept art for what we know as Super Sonic, a character form for Sonic that's introduced in this game. With Sonic collects 7 Chaos Emeralds, he turns super. He becomes an invincible god, basically. If you don't know anything about anime, you will know. You don't know that this is an obvious ripoff of Super Saiyan from Dragon Ball. Though I was introduced to this version before Dragon Ball, but I was like, yeah, Sonic stuff takes some liberties from Dragon Ball, if you didn't know. And this is the most obvious one. 7 Dragon Balls, Super Saiyan, like, come on. We also get new enemies. A lot of them are just very similar to the previous game, but let's go for a quick rundown, shall we? First, we got Buzzer. It's just a Buzz Bomber with a different painted coat, so not much to say here. We got Coconuts. A little monkey looks throws bombs from trees. I guess look at Coconut. This character would appear in other media, like The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, as a differently designed character, and in other versions would reappear in Sonic games to come. There's Masher. It's just a chopper. There's a Grabber, who is just a little black and yellow spider who grabs Sonic and drains some rings occasionally. Sometimes he'll just let him go. He kind of sucks. There's Spidey, not confused with the Mario enemy of the same name, who's just a little guy that doesn't really move a lot. He just shoots little projectiles out of him. Kind of similar to Krabby, but just weaker. There's Chop Chop, which is just pretty much the same thing as Jaws from Sonic 1. There's Grounder, who is just Burrowbot from Sonic 1. However, this character would reappear in the cartoons. Wisp, which is just an annoying little bug that shoots electricity at you sometimes. It's just very annoying. Like, screw this little guy. There's Crawl, who just has a bouncer spring. He can't hurt you, but at the same time, most of the time he'll just push you back, and like an annoying little bastard he is. There's Rexon, who's a dinosaur who likes lava, and I think he shoots projectiles. I actually don't know. I always kill him before he does anything. And according to the comic books, this guy has no friends. There's Spiker. This guy crawls to the ceiling and ground and shoots its one spike, but once it gets its spike gone, it's basically useless. There's Gula, which is just an orbit out with fire. There's Crawlton, or whatever it is, who is, it looks like a character, but is it? Because it's in the ceiling and it charges down at Sonic to attack, but it doesn't move out of its ceiling position. It kind of stays there and charges. This is Flasher. He shoots electricity at you, similar to the Wisp, but I think he does more damage. I don't really know. There's Aquas, who's this little seahorse guy who just basically just shoots projectiles, kind of just floats in midair. There's Octus, who's an octopus that stays on the ground, but it can jump and shoot projectiles, little balls from its mouth. Asteron, it stays in the wall, they crawl slowly, and they shoot projectiles from each 5 of their points. These guys are usually clumped in groups, and they can be very annoying, especially if there's a zone they appear in. Shellcracker, not confused with Krabby, has one giant claw, like it's like a Kegler or something like that, and he dual charges claw at you. Most of the thing about these guys are always in narrow corridors. They're hard to jump over, especially since they have a giant hitbox on their claw. They can be quite a nuisance. Slicer is one of the most infamous enemies in the game. It's a little praying mantis that shoots like a little boomerang-style scythe at Sonic, and they are placed in the most annoying spots possible. However, once they throw once, they basically have no other projectiles. They kind of just stand there like a little bit like a loser, like, okay, now what? It's so fun to hit them after they throw their things at you, because they're really annoying. Valkyrie is a bird jet that just kind of flies straight at you. Not much else to say. There's Nebula, who can shoot spike balls, apparently. I don't remember them doing that. Kind of just float in the mid-air. Don't really do much. That's what I remember playing in the game. I don't remember them shooting spike balls. There's Turtleoid, which is one of my favorites. It's like one big turtle guy. It doesn't really hurt Sonic because I can jump on it, but there's a little guy on top of his little sun who just rides him, and it shoots from the mouth. Once you get rid of the little sun, the turtle just kind of floats around, and you can just sit on him. It doesn't shoot projectiles. Pretty funny. And the last guy's Clucker, a little chicken in a turret that shoots bullets at Sonic. This guy renames rides with a curse word, so that gives you an idea how much I like this guy. The last Badnik I'm going to save for later is a character known as Mecha Sonic, and I'm going to save him for later for obvious reasons. So what's the story of Sonic 2? Well, there's actually quite a few bits of information here that we get. One, there's a bit of a lore. Now this lore I don't think is that important because it doesn't come back at all. Apparently, the West Side Island is the island that Sonic 2 takes place on. Had a bunch of people living on a very long time ago, and they used mysterious stones, which I believe are supposed to be the Chaos Emeralds. And when did they use them for bad, and their whole civilization went away, and their gods sealed them away, which doesn't really make much sense since I thought they were supposed to be a part of South Island. But whatever. The Chaos Emeralds are on West Side Island now. Or West Side Island. And another 7 Chaos Emeralds, of course. Completing them. I don't know why the first game only had 6, now we have 7. But whatever, 7 is better than 6, I guess. So yeah, we're probably wondering, what the hell is Sonic doing here? Well, Sonic is taking a vacation on West Side Island, of course. And he is flying there on his plane. Yeah, Sonic can fly a plane called the Tornado. He doesn't know that Eggman's following him, because Eggman, of course, is following Sonic. Why wouldn't he be? Introduced to Tails. Tails was bullied because of his appearance of having 2 tails. All the other kids made fun of him, so he used to hide away. Until he saw this new character known as Sonic the Hedgehog. He's like, wow, Sonic's cool. I wonder if I can keep up with him. And he actually is able to with his 2 tails. Sonic's like, what are you doing, kid? You want to follow me? You gotta make sure you can keep up. And Tails like, okay. Tails also interested in Sonic's plane. And so because he likes engineering, you didn't know. He's a little boy genius. While Tails is looking at Sonic's plane, the Tornado, there's a sudden crash. It turns out that Eggman is in the area. Of course he is. He's been following Sonic. And why is he here? Well, he detects the 7 Chaos Emeralds are here, and he wants to use it to power his new battle station, the Death Egg, which is totally not a ripoff of the Death Star from Star Wars. But whatever. Now Sonic, with his new buddy Tails, has to stop Eggman, collect all the 7 Chaos Emeralds, and save West Side Island. Before we get to the zones, I forgot there's little new animal buddies following Sonic around. Well, he has all the older Sonic animal buddies are also in this game, but we also get a couple of new ones. They aren't that important, so let's list them off right now. We got Becky the bear, Locky the eagle, Walkie the monkey, Talkie the turtle, and Mickey the mouse. Yes, they call the mouse Mickey. Emerald Hill Zone is our first zone, and if you couldn't tell by the name, it is very similar to Green Hill Zone. In fact, it was originally called Green Hill Zone until later being renamed to Emerald Hill Zone. Now, of course, I jumped to the special stage of the footage, but just ignore that for now. We're talking about Emerald Hill Zone. Of course, I just talked about the past, present, and future original Sonic of Sonic 2. Apparently, there's a little more information. Apparently, the present version of Emerald Hill Zone is going to be Mystic Cave Zone, being the ruined version. The Hilltop Zone was obviously past, and the Chemical Plant Zone was the future. I guess the two conflicting things say different things, but whatever. So those are the officially confirmed clear keys according to this. And it was actually named after an area in San Francisco, because if you don't know, Sega America is located near San Francisco. And there's an area called Emerald Hills. So that's pretty interesting little fact you should know. One of the big differences between Sonic 1 and 2 is that there's 2 acts instead of 3. In the second act, we have the boss fight instead of a third act. It makes the game flow a little bit better. Even though I guess it could have been fine with the third act, which is a boss fight only. But whatever. Emerald Hill is very flat, unlike Green Hill Zone. It has basically mostly 2 paths rather than 3 paths that Sonic 1 usually follows. Though most of Sonic 2 does follow the 3-path formula, Sonic 2 has a little bit more of the 2 paths. So it's mostly just a lower path and a higher path for the most part. The levels are a lot more wide than Sonic 1's higher based levels, but that's okay. The zone features enemies known as buzzers, coconuts, and mashers, as well as some nice watering effect. I think Emerald Hill Zone is one of the easiest Sonic zones. So it's probably the best level to start out playing a Sonic 2D game. I think it's a little too easy because the game amps up the difficulty of Chemical Plant Zone, in my opinion. But other than that, this zone is pretty easy. As a matter of fact, you can get all Chaos Emeralds in this one zone. Yeah, that's how easy it is to get stuff. Yeah, Chaos Emeralds are a little different to get in this game, and they're actually a little more important in this game than Sonic 1. But yeah, I don't have much else to say about Emerald Hill Zone. It has a lot of stacks, there's Green Hill Zone, and it has a pretty nifty boss. So let's get to the boss. Mechanically speaking, Sonic 2 has everything Sonic 1 has to offer, just a little bit more emphasis on the speed aspect and momentum-based platforming. But of course, now the end of the act has an Eggman boss fight, and this is known as the Egg Drillster. Well, I joke, it's not the Egg Drill, it's the Egg Drillster. Look it up. And this is probably one of the easiest boss fights in Sonic history, as you can easily jump on it multiple times as he goes back and forth with his little drill thing. For his last hit, he does shoot the drill at you, but it's really easy to dodge, and it's so easy to pick up your rings. And especially if you play this multiple times, this boss fight is super easy, and an easy way to get you into the Sonic 2 game. And at the end of every Sonic 2 act, much like Sonic 1, you go to the egg capsule and you free all your animal buddies. And Sonic and Tails just kind of sit there and wait for a while. I kind of wish they ran away, but at the same time, it's kind of fun to see them do that. Do prefer when they have a little animation in future games. So I'm going to talk about one of the main features of this game, the special stages. So there's goalposts in levels, like, all the time. But this time, goalposts, if you have 50 rings, they have little sparkles, so you can jump into them, and you go to the special stage. And special stages are basically these little half-pipe things, which were revolutionary at the time. The newer versions actually fixed the way it looks, so it's actually easier to play. But these things are not easy. Even though they were used as special stage design over and over again, I don't know a lot of people who really like them, even though they do look pretty interesting. At the time, people thought this was really cool because of the 3D effect. So basically, Sonic has to collect rings in order to get the Chaos Emerald. There's only a limited amount of rings, so if he messes up like once, especially later on, you can just mess it up. And this thing is not slow. It's mostly just a memory game. You gotta remember where each ring is. So it's a lot of trial and error, a little bit too much for my liking. It's a little too difficult, and the reward, it really isn't worth it. Because even though you get Super Sonic, it doesn't really add much to the game. In fact, it's not really necessary. It's a fun bonus, but at the same time, having to go for all this just slows the game down, even if Super Sonic does speed up the game a little bit. It's a neat feature, but at the same time, I don't think it's worth it in Sonic 2. At least in my opinion. Also, playing this with Tails makes it pretty hard, because Tails can collect rings, and he also can get easily hit by the bombs because of his delay, which makes this one really annoying. So yeah, I have never collected all the Chaos Emeralds in Sonic 2 for this reason. One, because I don't really have any desire. Two, the ending's actually better without the Chaos Emeralds, oddly enough. So yeah, that's why I don't collect Super Sonic. But I will showcase Super Sonic from another footage, if you will. So once you collect all Chaos Emeralds, the game will tell you that Sonic can change into Super Sonic, as it says there. And all you have to do is collect 50 rings and jump, and then Sonic turns Super. As you can see for this person, they obviously collected all of them in the first level. Super Sonic is one of the most broken things in a Sonic platformer, but it's one of the funnest things ever to get. It takes a lot of effort, especially in Sonic 2, to get. Once you do, it's basically like breaking the game, basically. Sonic becomes a god. As you see, when Sonic jumps, he turns Super, and that makes the game, he's just faster, he's invincible, and he can jump higher. So yeah, he can still get crushed and drowned, though, just keep that in mind. And there's also a limit, because as Super Sonic goes, the ring count steadily goes down, so you need to keep collecting rings. So yeah, you can't get screwed over. So there's downsides to it, but most times in Sonic 2 levels aren't that long, it makes this game a breeze. And Super Sonic does look really cool, though. Like I said, I never collected Super Sonic in Sonic 2 just because I don't like those special stages at all. They take so long to do, so I don't do it. And plus, like I said, the ending for the game is actually better without Super Sonic, oddly enough. And one of the most biggest complaints of Super Sonic that a lot of people also like me have is that when you become Super Sonic, the invincibility music plays. It says you'll mostly be playing Super Sonic throughout the entire level, you'll hear the invincibility chime. The whole entire thing, the stage music. Now, the stage music is always better than the invincibility theme. Not that the invincibility theme is bad, just the stage music is great. The original composer of Sonic 1 does all the level compositions again, and every song is a bop. Sonic 2 is just a great soundtrack as Sonic 1. It's kind of hard to compare since they're both pretty much equally great, but you can decide that comments below. What do you think? Sonic 1 or Sonic 2 soundtrack's better? I can't play because apparently they can get copyright stricken because the guy, I forget his name, he owns the rights to them. So yeah, whatever. Next zone is Chemical Plant Zone, one of the most famous zones from Sonic 2, because this zone was brought back in Sonic Generations, and then it kept getting brought back and back and back and back and back. It was weird. For 20 years, we only saw Chemical Plant Zone once, and then all of a sudden, it comes back and back and back. Like, oh my goodness. This zone is very unique as is a chemical plant. It's a city that has basically a little facility that has runs chemicals. Of course, that Eggman built. And this zone is mostly easy. It's some of the fastest you can go in a Sonic game, especially early on. This level also introduces the more infamous part of the speed panels, basically a panel that makes Sonic go extremely fast already, unlike Springs, which you have to purposely hit them, and they bounce you up, or, they're a little different. Sonic hits them, you get close instantly fast. It's a little controversial, but at the same time, it doesn't really matter that much. I think it's better without the speed boost, but at the same time, they don't really hurt me. Now, Chemical Plant is not a hard zone until you get to Act 2, which I'll get to when we get to it. But it is a pretty fun zone. Like, Sonic can go really fast. There's a lot of tubes and turds to go. He goes for tubes. There's a lot of tunnels. It's really fun. Though there is a lot of waiting. Like, these tubes are interesting to see, but at the same time, you're not really doing much. This has actually become a trope in Sonic, where it's a showcase of, like, coolness rather than actually doing anything. Because when he's in those states, you don't really control him. They just showcase, like, look at how cool this is. We call those rests in Sonic. I don't hate them. I actually quite like them because it's a nice little showpiece. Like, here's a little break for you now. Then the gameplay goes back. It's pretty neat. Some people don't like them. I like them. Whatever. Sonic Emerald Hill Zone has only two enemies, Grabber and Spidey, who are one of the lamest enemies in the Sonic series because they suck and they don't do their job very well. This zone's a little infamous for our new players because there's a beginner's trap here. Near the end of the level, you get to this area. Now, I always fall down here, but that's the path you want to take, believe it or not, because it takes you to this area here. This is where the chemicals, that purple water flows up. It's not poisonous, but it makes Sonic drown. Where you gotta do these platforms here, which can be a little tricky, especially underwater, especially for new type players. This is just like a really cruel trick. Especially since once they're out of this trap, they can fall right back down to it, thanks to bobbless little pits that fall all of a sudden. If you're like me, you've done this multiple times, so it's not really an issue at all. But for new players, this was a nightmare, especially when I first played this when I was a little kid. I could not get past this. I eventually did at some point, but it took way too long. And I think that this zone, even though it's not too hard, is a little more difficult than it really has any right to be, especially since Sonic 2, I feel like, especially for most levels, are actually pretty easy. It is weird that one of the most difficult parts of Sonic 2 is very early in the game. The rest of the zones, in my opinion, aren't that difficult. There's way too many, especially this part where there's actually parts you're going to fall down, but you can't really see, so he's got to know there beforehand. So that's why I always have to slow down here. Though the last time I played this, after this playthrough, I was able to do it without, so that's only because I remembered it. I'm not too big a fan of that. I like remembering, knowing stuff like, oh, that's cool. But, like, not knowing there's going to be, like, a bottomless pit here, I have to redo that stuff is kind of annoying, especially since no other Sonic Zone really does that. Especially here, because a lot of times you'll be going to this area fast, and you can just fall back down and have to redo it all over again. Especially since the purple water appears there, it can be really easy to die. And one of my least favorite parts of the zone is this area here, the boss fight, Egg Poison. These are bottomless pits. You fall down there, you die. This boss fight isn't that hard, but they aren't that you can easily get knocked into them, like I just did there. The last time I played this, I actually didn't have a problem with it, but most of the times I will die here, and it's even though I know this zone by heart, and it's like it just gets a little tricky. And I'll be like, oh, some people will play this game more, but like, oh, it's not that hard. But trust me, when you first play this is not an easy boss fight. It is easy, but at the same time, it isn't. You got to redo stuff over and over again just to fight Eggman here. You might think, you know what, I'm playing this game's way too hard. Well, later on, I'm going to say that you guys suck at Metropolis Zone, because I think that zone's not that hard. But this part, I think, is a little too hard for the beginning. Like I said, I'm not a big fan, if you see my other things, I'm not a big fan of instant death in games. I like the fact that one reason I like Sonic is that you can collect your rings. It's a little bit more of a fairness to that. And I'm just not a big fan of those things dropping in and out. It just, the boss fight is easy once you figure it out, but the fact you get to really be aware of those platforms more so than any ever is just kind of annoying, at least in my opinion. Zone is Aquatic Ruin Zone, or water level of the game, but you actually don't even have to deal with water in this level. That's actually insane. There's actually, like, this is the only water level in the game, and you can avoid the water entirely, which is pretty crazy. We got a little taste of water in Chemical Plant at the end, but like I said, you can actually avoid water in that game part 2. So yeah, one of the worst parts of Sonic 1 is not even in this game, basically. You could choose not to go through it, which is amazing. Great level design there. Like, you can get punished by going down there, and the path is slow, but it's not as brutal as Labyrinth Zone either. So that's why I really like this zone. Actually, not really that much. I like the concept, but overall, I think this level's just okay. I kind of zoom by it really fast from time to play, and kind of like, oh yeah, that zone just went by. Yeah, another little fun fact about this zone is that originally it was going to be called Neo Green Hill Zone. Why? I don't know. Of course, that name will actually be reused for a future Sonic game, but we're not at that point, are we? This level includes three enemies: the Chop Chop, Grounder, and Wisp. Now, the top half of this zone is pretty basic. You're going to go for leaves and just run past pillars. Well, enemies can attack you. It's not really too difficult. And, yeah, there's not a lot of enemies up here anyway, other than these like little spike totems here that shoot at you. But this level ends pretty fast if you couldn't tell from there. The Act 2 is when it gets a little bit more different. Act 2 has a little bit of a trick here. Like, I always forget this part. Like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. If you don't land those platforms, you have to take this waterway. Not waterway, but, a water pathway underwater. I don't think this level is that interesting distinctly. Like, you're just covered by leaves that don't look that great. But other than that, this is like a way, okay, you're pulling yourself. So the next time you do this, you gotta get back up there. And yeah, there's plenty of bubbles, though. One of the annoying things is that when I was playing this, for reference again, I was trying to get an air bubble, and Tails was able to get my air bubble before I did, and the next air bubble didn't come, so I drowned. Like, come on, Tails. Oh yeah, well, Tails is I forgot to mention this, but yeah, Tails follows you around, and he also can hit enemies and do other things. In fact, if a person plugs in a second player, they can actually control Tails, but they can only appear on screen when Sonic's there. So yeah, the screen doesn't follow them; they follow Sonic. And it's mostly, a lot of people like Tails because when they were younger, they were like the younger brother or sister or whatever, and they relate to Tails being the younger sibling, which is probably why they designed him that way. He's following Sonic. But yeah, one of the annoying things is you can take hit points, and since enemies instantly, like their most invisibility shield, you can accidentally get hit by certain enemies because of that or go through them. So that can be annoying. But I don't find it too annoying. In fact, I like having a little friend along. It makes the adventure feel fun. I don't know why Tails is not in the footage once I'm talking about him. But yeah, Tails can cause some drama, though you can choose to not play as Tails. So you have to just purposely select it in the settings before you start the game. You start the game immediately with Tails, but if you don't want to play as Tails, you can choose not to. You can also play as Tails by himself. However, there's not much point to doing that, because in this game, he can fly. You can't fly when you're playing as him, which makes no sense, but whatever. Boss fight for Quiet Ring Zone is pretty easy. The Egg Hammer. Two combos will appear up the ground. If you go on the left or right, you stand on them, and you can easily hit Eggman multiple times. He'll try to hit you up here, so be careful. And if you're down below, there's a bunch of arrows, and you jump on the arrows that hit the pillars in order to jump at him. The mobile version and the Origins versions are actually a little harder because the widescreen makes the gap between the pillars a lot farther, so it's not as easy to hit Eggman. But other than that, this boss fight's pretty easy. So it's a little trickier on the widescreen version, but on the original Genesis version, it's super easy. Next zone is Casino Night Zone, one of the more famous zones from Sonic 2, as it will start a trend of casino levels in Sonic. Yeah, it's kind of weird, but casinos and Sonic go hand in hand. Also pinball. There's a lot of pinball elements in the zone. Basically, this zone is one of the most chillax levels because it's chillax music, and basically there's like only one enemy, the Crawl, which if you remember, only really bounces you back and it can barely damage you. There's like no spikes. This level is actually pretty easy, so I'm actually surprised it came level 4 when I think it should have been level 2 to be honest. Because like I said, there's not much danger and it helps you with the mechanics of Sonic. So I would have put this level 2 if I was Sega, but what do I know? I'm just a stupid YouTuber. But yes, Casino Night Zone is pretty great. Of course, they brought the elements of this zone to later levels, unlike Chemical Plant where they just copy and paste the same zone over and over again. So this level is mostly about pinball zones, and there is little slot machines that Sonic can go into and teaches the kids the wonders of gambling. And there's not much to talk about those slot machines. Basically, to get Sonic, you get coins. Tails, you get coins. Eggman, you lose all your coins. I don't particularly do it because it's not really worth it unless you want extra lives and stuff like that. But other than that, this zone is not much to talk about. It's pretty great. There's springs that push you around. There's elevators, and there's not a whole lot of damage. It's a fun zone, fun mechanics, and let's go to the boss fight since I don't have much to talk about this zone. In Act 2 of Casino Night Zone, though, you have to deal with having to go down the pinball machine, basically. You can go up and get some coins, but you want to actually go down, like kind of like how in pinballs, like your ball's going constantly down. Pretty neat. Though, yeah, let's go to the elevator that brings us to the boss fight. The boss fight is the Egg Claw, which is fought in this pinball arena, where you can use momentum to try to launch yourself up at Eggman or jump on the springs. Fortunately, it's got some lasers to shoot at you, so this one's can be a little tricky, especially if you don't get the hang of the momentum here. Yeah, because you can't hit Eggman from the bottom, it's pretty easy to hit Eggman from the bottom, even when you're not trying to, like I do. One of the best ways I find to fight this boss is to use a spin dash and use the walls and then jump off them to hit him, because getting stuck on the pinballs can actually hurt you more than anything else. Plus, the rings can get trapped away, so you can lose your rings pretty easily. You also can tell that Eggman's shooting a spike ball there, so it's a little tricky, but not too hard. A beginner might fail, but if you're like me and you're pretty good, then you won't have any problems. The next zone is Hilltop Zone. This one is a little controversial due to its music. I like the music personally, but I can see what some people don't like. It's very weird, but I kind of like the aesthetic. I actually really like this zone a lot. It's like being high in the sky with these like things makes it seem pretty cool. It's like a little, you go in a mountain, there's like volcanic ash and stuff like that. It's pretty neat. Yeah, this zone, like I said, was originally conceptualized as the past version of Emerald Hill Zone, which is pretty neat. And of course, there's 3 enemies in this zone. There's the Gula, which is the Orbinauts that shoot fire. The Rexon, who only appears in lava, and the Spiker. We also got these Seesaws returning from Starlight Zone, and they have a little angry face there. I don't think that's an enemy, just some random angry face. Maybe it's the Gula. It's like, hey, I'm gonna launch you up, and yeah, nice little momentum-based physics here. So you launch up on the Seesaw. It's a lot of that. This zone is pretty basic. A little bit more platforming than the other levels, and a climbing, but it's a hill, so what do you expect? During this zone, you will go inside a cave, and the walls will start to crawl, and you have to climb up before you get crushed. It's pretty exciting. If you're like me, you got the invincibility monitor, so it looks weird here, but apparently you're not supposed to do what I did, or something, I don't even know. But yeah, essentially, you can walk through lava with this invincibility monitor, if you couldn't tell. And there's a lot of crazy things going on. One of my favorite things to do in this level is just jump on a Rexon's head and use his body as a platform. Take that, Rexon. Act 2, you'll be in this volcano, or maybe some mountain inside. I guess it's a volcano. We don't really see it erupting, but we see lava rising. You gotta get yourself out of there. And there's a lot of things that can trick you, because keep in mind, you can also get crushed by this thing, so you gotta be very careful here. So honestly, it's really not that hard, though you are rewarded with one of the weirdest things in Sonic 2. This random spring thing here. Why do they put this here? I don't know, but it is fun. Also, it's one of the easiest in Sonic history, because all you have to do is bounce on this guy. This is the X-Scorcher Mark II. What happened to Mark 1? I have no idea. He'll shoot fire at you, but like I said, you just bounce on him instantly and just win. In your rings, you can pick him up pretty easily. So yeah, Egg-Scorcher Mark II wasn't that great. It's also not that great to be diving in lava, Eggman. You can easily get yourself injured. Next zone is Mystic Cave Zone. I guess Sonic went more in the caves of the Hilltop Zone, and now he's in a Mystic Cave Zone. Of course, this zone has a little bit of secrets. Basically, this level looks scary, but it's really not. It's a little mining cart area. Not really a minecart area, but it has the themes of it, because there's no minecarts. But there's a lot of falling platforms, there is spike traps, and there's a couple of enemies that could cause some damage, like Crawltron and Flasher, though they're really not that difficult. Crawltron there, it can be a little difficult. There's a lot of crushing boxes and stuff like that, and there's an infamous spike trap here. You gotta pull levers and stuff like that. This level has secrets if you're playing the mobile and Origins port, where you actually can get to a hidden level, which we'll all be talking about once I'm done talking about this zone. Other than the great music, there's not much to talk about this zone. It's just a little basic platforming with some fast-moving stuff and a little bit more tricks up there the sleeve of this level, but nothing too difficult. Just keep in mind that there's some things that might insta-kill you here, so as long as you have that in mind, you should be pretty good in this zone. Not too difficult, but a little nice increase in difficulty. Act 1 and 2 are pretty much the same, so let's go to the boss fight, which is the Egg Digger. Eggman is drilling and the spikes from the ceiling, and his spikes will hurt you, but you can hit him from the bottom or the side, depending on where his drills are facing. Not too difficult, just gotta keep in mind that there's spikes covering the ceiling and try to avoid them. You just make sure you click your rings if you do get hit. But other than that, it shouldn't be too difficult. There is a little more bonuses to this area, but because it is related to another level, that's why I'm talking about the boss fight before I talk about the extra additional stuff. When playing this zone in Sonic 2 Original, if you forgot to hit that lever there, you fall in this pit. Now this pit you can't escape from, so you have Super Sonic, you just have to wait here to die, basically, because you can't jump high enough, and you're just waiting for a spike trap to kill you. As Tails there just gets hit constantly. It's pretty funny. However, I guess the people decided that this spike trap can be pretty infamous, but I guess the new developers for the mobile version decided they want to do something different with this pit. Zone in the mobile and Origins version, there is no spike trap. In fact, it takes you to the next zone, Hidden Palace Zone. Palace Zone was originally a scrap level, but a lot of the code was still in the Sonic 2 game, and the developers of the mobile version, who will later go on to make Sonic Mania, if you didn't know, decided they wanted to include this as a little bonus level. A little secret. If someone tried to jump in this spike pit, they'd find another level. So this basically it's a little mini level, but it does feature a lot of new enemies, including the Batbot, which is a bat, a Jelly Knight, which is a jellyfish that floats around, Reds, which is a little Triceratops that I guess will charge at you, and Stegway, which is basically a Motobug, but a lot of different little spike traps. This level isn't too hard. In fact, it's very short, but it does feature a boss fight. It will take you to the next zone of Oil Ocean Zone. So that's why I thought I'd mention it. So yeah, most people will be playing have this option available unless you're playing the original version or earlier versions. Though you're most likely probably playing on the phone because a lot of people play on phones or the Origins version. I do recommend those versions quite a bit actually. Though I do think the Genesis version has a lot to be desired if you like playing originally. But yeah, this is a really cool bonus feature. There is water. There's a lot of different traps here. And overall, it's great they actually added basically a whole new zone to it. Basically a 20-year-old, 30-year-old game now. The boss fight of the Hidden Palace Zone is a new character thing they've pretty much made up for the zone, which is Brass Eggman. Eggman decides to test out his musical talents and plays brass instruments. Of course, this causes the spikes to drop from the ceiling, and the spike bombs will explode. You just got to make sure that the spike bomb explodes on top of Eggman, and they can get extra hits onto him. It's actually a little more trickier than other boss fights because it requires you to actually use the elements of the level more so than any other Sonic 2 boss fights usually do. But yeah, it's pretty neat, and it's really fun to see Eggman just basically toot his own horn. The next zone is Oil Ocean Zone, one of my personal favorites. I love the music, the heavy bass. I played bass, so I love the fact this song has so much bass in it. It's great, I love it. The whole soundtrack is great, but this one in particular is one of my favorites. And just the idea, you're getting closer to Eggman, it's a very unique feel. It's like all this purples and this kind of aquatic feel, but at the same time, you're realizing like this area must have been like an actual ocean before for Eggman polluted it. So it's kind of bright, but also kind of dark at the same time. I just love this level. You got a bunch of air pipes going around, shooting Sonic, you get shot from tubes. There's like oil slides and stuff like that. There's a really cool version of this level in Sonic Mania where you can burn the whole place down, essentially. Yeah, I like this level a lot, you couldn't tell. And of course there's oil at the bottom, which you can't just jump out of. But if you sink down, you can die. I haven't done that since I was like 7, so yeah, I did die here like an idiot. But other than that, only as a kid though. So yeah. Anyway, there is 2 enemies here, the Aquas and Octus. Aquas? I don't even know how to speak anymore, apparently. But yeah, Oil Ocean is pretty great. There's not a whole lot to say about it or what I've just said about it, so let's get on to the boss fight. The boss fight takes us right over the Oil Ocean. It's one of the last easy boss fights. Eggman will arrive in his submarine. It's not yellow, it's a silver submarine. And basically, you just hit him over and over again. Yeah, it's pretty easy. He shoots like spikes in this thing. It's supposed to hit you on the pillar, which could be hard to damage, but if you can see here, you just jump and hide there, and he can't stop you. It's actually pretty funny, actually. So yeah, that thing's basically useless, so you just wait for him to come up and then bounce on him again until he explodes. Really easy. It might seem harder if you had to do what you're actually supposed to do, but since you don't have to, you just do what I did and just cheap it. But even then, it's not too hard. Just gotta make sure you jump over all the laser blasts and stuff like that. And that's the last easy boss fight in this game. The rest of the boss fights are not gonna be easy. The next zone is the infamous Metropolis Zone. And yeah, I know some people are sweating just hearing that. When I talked about in my live stream, which you can watch the footage I'm playing right here, I talked about how I don't think this level's that hard, at least compared to Scrap Race Zone. I'm not the biggest fan of it, obviously, but I don't think it's that bad. One of the biggest things is that this zone has 3 acts, which can be pretty daunting. But other than that, I've only died very few times, especially compared to other zones in this game. Most zones aren't that hard, are the chemical plants for beginners. But other than that, this zone isn't too difficult. There's no instant death traps here like in other Sonic levels. So, other than here, that can crush you. But some of the enemies are pretty annoying. But there's a lot of momentum base. Though one of the big things about this zone that I think is a big problem is that this zone's long. It has 3 acts like the other levels 2 acts. So and each act is like longer than the average Sonic 2 stage. So you spend a lot of time here. And there's a lot of death traps. This zone also wraps vertically. So if you go down and up, you can eventually come back to the same spot you were, which is really weird. And like I said, the enemies are very infamous. I'm not sure if this is true or not, because there's a citation needed on this act, but apparently one of the reasons why the 3rd act exists is because it's supposed to be the original Genocide City zone, but I have no idea. It sounds likely, but it's not confirmed. The enemies in this zone are probably the most infamous inside too, because of their placements more than anything. The astronauts you'll see most of, the starfishes, they'll appear when you're trying to get up, and they'll shoot you down, and you have to go back up, and they'll reappear. They'll show these screws, they'll appear on the sides, and they're pretty hard to dodge on these areas. And if you jump off here, especially if you're holding right, you can jump right off the screw, even to dodge them. So you gotta be careful with those guys. So if you're careful, you can stay out of their range, and they won't shoot at you. Just make sure you stay out of their way as quick as possible. And that's one of the main devices I have for this zone. Is make sure you collect a bunch of rigs, because there's always going to be an enemy. Be prepared for it to appear, something is going to appear right in front of your face that might hit you. like the shell crackers and slicers, who also appear in dickish locations, mostly in later acts. Slicers can be very annoying, but like I said, they only have one shot, so once they're cut off that one shot, they should be pretty easy to take care of. Some annoying anime placements are like the shell cracker. Pretty hard to dodge this guy, especially when he shoots his little cracker at you. He can crack my shell any day of the week, apparently. I'm just going up this thing and, oh crap, I got hit by a slicer. Yeah, that's stuff that happens all the time in Metropolis Zone. But like I said, if you collect your rings, it's not too bad. And plus, you can give your enemy a taste of how you feel by just destroying it pretty much instantly. So that's at least you get some satisfaction. Like, look at him. Look at that smug bastard. I didn't even have to kill him there. I just felt like doing it because he pissed me off. I mentioned the last time I was playing this zone just to testing for this video, I got stuck here. I have no idea why. I think later on I discovered my Jess controller had a problem holding up. Because I played on emulator for the recording because it's easier to record. So I wanted to play the Jess mode just to get a feel how the game actually is supposed to feel. I have no idea how I got stuck here, but I couldn't move at all. Like, I could jump higher, but yeah, you get stuck apparently in this spot. I have no idea if this works for everyone else, but keep in mind that these things can mess with you. Look at that guy, I think he's gonna hit me. Too bad you can't, but look at him, he's looping around, huh? He didn't get me, sucker. I say that as soon as then I get hit by another one immediately. Yeah, look at that slowdown. Act 3 starts off hard. How does it start off hard? Well, the first thing they throw at you is a slicer, and I didn't expect that. It's like, hey! After spending a pretty long time in this zone, we finally get to see the boss, known as the Egg Bouncer. Eggman has all these balls surrounding him, and they create little egg bubbles? I don't even know what's going on here. You gotta hit him, but you gotta avoid getting hit by those things. Whatever it is, this is a weird boss fight. And it's not too difficult, but it can be a little annoying. I don't have a perfect strategy for this thing. Like, how am I supposed to hit him when his things are floating around? Especially not trying not to lose my rings here, which is a lot easier said than done. After that, we chase Eggman in the sky in Sky Chase Zone. Yes, Eggman's fleeing, and we're chasing him after him in our new play, the Tornado. So this is Sonic's plane. A lot of people think it's Tails' plane, but nope, it's actually Sonic. Sonic can fly. Can you fly? And this zone is pretty basic. Basically, you have a couple enemies coming at you. You can't really control the speed. It's kind of an auto-scroller, but it's kind of a set piece before the ending, basically. And yeah, you can spin dash and die here, apparently. Just keep that in mind. So I don't recommend spin dashing here. But overall, this zone isn't too hard. You got 3 enemies coming at you, Bulkeries, which fly at you, so keep those in mind. Not too difficult. The Nebulas, who can shoot spike balls at you. I don't know why I didn't remember them doing that. I guess they're so unimportant that I forgot they can do that. The Nebula is just one of the weirdest looking enemies in Sonic. Like, what even are them? What even are they? I can't even speak. But that's one of my favorite enemies in Sonic too. The Turtleoids. I mean, look at that. Look how cute that little guy is. And then I kill him. And then I use his dad as a platform. I love that. I love that. I don't know why I like that so much. Anyway, yeah, you can control Tails by looking up and down on your plane. And keep in mind, it is a little finicky. So if you move too far to the left, sometimes too fast, you can fall off and die. But other than that, it's not too hard. But it takes us to the next zone. To take it to the next zone, it has a little set piece here. Before you even get to that zone, we get to see what it looks like. This is the Wing Fortress zone, and we get to see a whole tour of it as Tails flies by it. And Sonic's like, oh my goodness, this is one big fortress. This zone is Wing Fortress zone, and this zone starts out with getting shot at, and Tails actually gets crashes a plane. You jump off, like, no, my little buddy. Yes, at this point, if you play with Tails, Tails goes away for the rest of the game. And this is one of my least favorite zones. It's epic, it looks cool, it's a nice set piece, but there's a huge difficulty spike during one section. I was able to do it after trial and error, but there's bottomless pits below me, which I'm not a big fan of. But there's a certain area that I cannot stand in this level that comes up. And there's actually, in order to get there, you have to clip it. It's kind of not intuitive, and the boss fight's really annoying. It's a short level, but at the same time, it can be pretty annoying. But yeah, I do like the music a lot. It's a place. I don't know how Sonic's not getting burned by those flames, but yeah, these jumps here can be devastating. There's a lot of annoying stuff going on. There's only one enemy here, though, called a Clucker, and they can be a little bit of a fucker. I'm not a big fan of this area here, because it's very unintuitive how you're supposed to get over there. Like, I think you just walk through the wall at one point. Like, okay, I didn't know I could do that. Especially here, it's like, okay, can I get up there? Apparently not. I was like, oh, it's pretty annoying. Eventually you get to these platforms, and there's wind turbines there that can also hit you, though it's easier to, you have to skip the level here. But here's my least favorite part of the game. These things move away so fast before Sonic can even jump down on them, and you can die so easily. You have to time it basically perfectly. I've done it so many times that I've actually, after this time, I was able to do it, like, without like having to do so. But the fact that you have to really be careful there is really annoying. They disappear so fast that it's one of my least favorite parts of any Sonic game, at least in my opinion. It's so annoying. This is what a perfect run looks like. You jump, each one to each one, and you have to do it really extra early because that could happen. That's like a perfect run. See how close I was? They just dropped there. I hate that part so much. Also, this could happen to you in this zone. Lovely. Alright, once you get past the platforming hell here, we enter Eggman's fortress, you break it open, and we go fight the first boss of this, well, zone. There's only one boss. And this thing can be pretty annoying. We got a laser that we gotta hit. There's these spike platforms that you can't hit from the bottom or you'll get hit. And the laser moves back and forth. So there's a lot of things that can hit you here. And the rings are kind of hard to pick up in this area because if they fall out batteries, you lose them. So it's pretty difficult, actually. It's a lot more difficult than it looks. Trust me. Because if there's only like one platform, it'd be fine. But the fact there's like three, you gotta keep worry of. And the fact that you can lose your rings that easy makes it pretty difficult. And the fact that the thing you're hitting can shoot you that easily makes this one the hardest boss fights. Though after a little trial and error, it should be that hard for you to do. Especially after getting past that platforming crap that you had to do earlier. Also, this boss fight's known as Laser Prison. What a fitting name for it. It quite literally is a prison of lasers. Eventually, you can defeat this boss fight. And you gotta chase after Eggman for beating up your friend and trying to take over the world. You fall down and he's getting away on a rocket. Well, Sonic can't fly. Well, unfortunately. But luckily, well, I said he can fly, but he's a plane. But luckily, Tails came back. He had a little engine to the tornado. So now Sonic can catch up with Eggman. He's going to fly to the Death Egg in the sky. We actually don't know what the Death Egg looks like in this game, believe it or not. It's mentioned in the manual, and you're inside it at one point, but you don't actually see what it looks like. It's pretty interesting until Sonic 3. Yeah, Sonic grabs a jet, and he goes into outer space. Quite literally here. It's actually kind of neat to add little cutscenes now, because Sonic 1 didn't really have that, but now Sonic 2 has a little bit more story to it, which is pretty neat. You feel a lot of the impact here, like, okay, you've been chasing this guy for a while, quite literally, in the last couple of zones, you really feel that chase. And now your buddy helps you out, and now you're going into the final thing in space. Nothing can save you now, because now we're in the Death Egg Zone. There's no enemies here. In fact, this little area here is the only time you can hear this one piece of music here. And the Death Egg Zone is one of the most infamous parts of Sonic 2 because there's two boss fights and you're doing them with 0 rings. But they are pretty iconic, so let's get to them. Our first guy is Mecha Sonic, or as I used to call him, Silver Sonic. Yes, this guy is probably Mecha Sonic. Our first robotic counterpart to Sonic. Eggman thought, what would be great to fight against Sonic? Well, why not a robotic doppelganger of Sonic? Pretty great idea. And so this guy can be pretty difficult because of the 0 ring policy. Though once you learn his pattern, he's not too difficult. The best way to beat him is to when you start before he lands down, you do a spin dash and you do a lot of hits on him. Be careful of his balls and make sure you watch out and just make sure you hit him whenever you can. Other than that, should be too difficult. Just play it safe here, and you should be able to take out Mecha Sonic. Eggman's watching, but now we're saying, Eggman, I'm gonna fight you for real. But Eggman has a little bit of a trick up his sleeve, and you'll be able to see why. As he runs away, he's faster than Sonic, like always. He jumps into a new mech, starting the first ever appearance of the Death Egg robot. This giant mech is here to stop Sonic once and for all. And it's not that hard. If you don't know how to fight it, I guess it could be, but really it's not that hard. Anyway, he'll march up front, he'll zoom into the air, he'll try to hit you, use spin dash away, and then he'll bounce down, and that's when you hit him. I didn't hit him there, and I failed like an idiot. But yeah, other than that, this boss fight isn't too difficult once you know the pattern. So here's a better showcase of that. You bends down, you hit, and then you walk all the way to the left, and it'll shoot things there. Once you're all the way to the left, it shouldn't damage you. So you basically, you keep the pattern up and go. You go all the way to the right, you wait for him to charge down at you, you go to the left, hit him once, and then charge back. It does take a while, but you can hit him more than once if you want to, but keep in mind, his spiky hands have a big hitbox. So be very careful here. Other than that, this boss fight actually isn't that hard once you figure out the pattern. Even though I did die the first time when I showcased there. This boss fight, because of how infamous it became a mainstay in later Sonic games, reusing this type of the Death Egg robot. Even if it doesn't appear in the Death Egg, it's still called the Death Egg robot. There's been toys and merchandise, and even it appears in the movie. So this thing is pretty iconic. And after one hit, it explodes, and with it exploding, the whole Death Egg explodes around it. Sonic runs as fast as he can out of there. And then we get a cutscene. Yeah, there's a cutscene in this game where the animals are watching from the down below, including Tails, who we see here in this nice little pixel art. This is playing music from an actual song from Dreams Come True, the band that the composer of course, was part of, and they digitalized the song basically. That's why it has a different melody progression. You can kind of hear this, even though I don't even know the lyrics, you can definitely hear it. Yeah, basically Tails is flying up to catch Sonic as he falls down from the Death Egg. Then once he beats Eggman, Sonic falls down. He's like, I don't know what's going to catch me. I'm going to fall. I'm falling. Help. I'm falling. And then Tails, our good buddy, catches us. Friendship saves the day. And we get flickies flying around us, saying like, yes, we completed and saved the day. The end of Sonic punching us in the face. If you collected all 7 Chaos Emeralds, Sonic becomes super and it flies down, so Tails saving him basically means nothing. In case you're wondering, no, Super Sonic cannot fight the boss fight. You just fight him as normal Sonic. So yeah, basically, it's less impactful as Tails catching Sonic's about to fall. And also, except Flickies, we get Eagles, or Lockies as they're called. Like I said, I prefer the original ending, but technically this is the canon ending, mostly because in Sonic 3, Sonic has all the 7 Chaos Emeralds, making it so that he collects all of them in West Side Island. So there you go. And instead of punching the screen once, Sonic punches the screen twice. And in case you're wondering, this is what the Tails ending looks like. Tails falls from the sky. Instead of Tails saving Tails, we have Sonic saving Tails. Also, because they don't edit the intro, we just have him falling for a lot longer than Sonic did, because they didn't have that little white cutscene where Sonic's looking up the sky. Also, the Tails ending is not canon, because Sonic just one defeats Eggman, not Tails. But whatever. Like, seriously, how long is it going to fall for? Seriously. This is taking forever. Finally, Sonic, you took your sweet-ass time to catch Tails here. And yes, you're playing Sky Chase Zone. Sonic's the one in the plane instead of Tails. And it looks like he gets chickens, or cluckies, if you will, instead of Sonic's flickies or lockies. And that is the Tails ending of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Oh, and here's the Knuckles ending. He punches the screen as well. If you didn't know, Sonic 2 actually had future DLC, that being Knuckles the Echidna and Sonic the Hedgehog 2. In order to get this to happen, you had to have the Sonic and Knuckles cart and have Sonic 2 on top of it, meaning you play the whole game through as Knuckles the Echidna. And basically, Knuckles has all the features he does in Sonic 3. We're going to talk about much about this because we'll talk about it later when we get to Sonic 3. But yeah, you can play as Knuckles in Sonic 3, and you can do that on the mobile version as well as the Origins version, as well as playing as Amy. In case you're wondering, this will look like we beat the game as Amy in Sonic Origins Plus. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is a perfect sequel in every way. It improves on pretty much everything the first game had to offer. New features, new modes, more storylines, and even more great music tracks the first game had. It is considered to be, a lot of fans, to be one of the best in this franchise. I think Sonic 3 is the best 2D Sonic game personally. However, this game I think gets better and better the more you play it. Where to find Sonic 2? Well, this is this part of the segment that I like to go through, where we get to showcase all the versions of Sonic 2 you can play. I mentioned a couple in the video itself, but here is the games, and I like to showcase the prices just in case you want to know where to find them for each console or specific game you want. Alright, there's also emulation if you want. I prefer playing on original hardware, even though I do record for it on emulation just because it's easier for me to do so. Sonic 2 on Genesis is one of the games if you have a Genesis, you probably already own this game. As you can see, it's actually pretty cheap because there's so many copies of it. So if you have Genesis and don't have Sonic 2, I have no idea what you're doing. This game actually eventually will become a package title too. So this game is pretty easy to find. Like I said, $13 for a complete copy, $7 loose. You should have this game if you have a Sega Genesis. I bought Sonic Jam before, but yeah, Sonic Jam it also features the game. It's a very expensive game, if you couldn't tell, but it does feature a little bit of a remaster of the Sonic 2. Actually, we'll be talking about Sonic Jam when we get to it, because there's enough unique features to talk about. Any of the compilations, if they have unique enough features, I will talk about them, actually. So stuff like the Mega Collection and Jeff's Collection, I'm actually going to talk about them, just because I think it's interesting to cover all the Sonic stuff and what they do with the collections. So yeah, Sonic Jam is very expensive. However, you can buy your Saturn to play the PAL Japanese version, and they are a lot cheaper copies. They're like cut in half. So that you want to play Sonic Jam that way, or the emulation, there you go. Like I said, the games are built up from the ground up again, much like how the mobile versions were. So Sonic 2 plays a little differently than the Genesis version. But you can't play it on the Sonic Jam if you like the Saturn a lot. So I don't recommend it because the price is extreme. Plus, there's other versions to play it with. But if you like the Saturn, might as well play it on this. I haven't mentioned this in my first video, but there's this thing called Sonic Classics, like a collects a bunch of Sonic games on one Genesis cartridge. The reason I don't mention this is because it's actually a little more obscure, and even though I just cover obscure stuff, but because we're talking about Genesis, I'm talking about the main game. And you can probably find that a lot easier than you can do this. You know, this game isn't that expensive. I haven't seen any of these out in the wild, so you're just better off having the original cartridge. I don't know if it even works with Sonic and Knuckles or Sonic 2. but this does exist if you want to have it this way. Though, I guess it is more convenient, but if you're a side collector, you're going to want to have all these games individually with their manuals and stuff like that. The game is featured on Sega Smash Pack 2. Not an awful price, but it is an older PC game. It will work on modern PCs. But at the same time, you have way better ways of playing Sonic 2 on the computer than this. But if you want to, here you go, Sega Smash Pack 2. Much like all the other games, it's on Sonic Mega Collection. Considered one of the best Sonic collections. Of course, this collection, you already know, is on the GameCube, Xbox, and PS2. People say the GameCube version has better aesthetics, while the PS2 and Xbox versions have a couple more bonus games. But yeah, other than that, the collection is definitely worth picking up, especially if you're a 6-gen lover like I am. Sonic 2 is also on the Sega Genesis collection for the PSP and PS2. PSP version is obviously more unique because it's on the go. It's actually not a bad version of Sonic 2. It's probably a pretty good way to play Sonic 2 on the go at the time, since there really wasn't any other way other than using the Sega Nomad. A mobile version was created in 2006, however this version got replaced by, in 2011 I believe, or 12, I'm not too sure, by the more superior version that was built from the ground up with the new mechanics that are refined, as well as the bonus features, as well as playing as Knuckles. It's a pretty great version to play if you don't mind playing on a phone or tablet. The way you could have played the game back in the day was on the Wii Virtual Console or the Xbox 360 Arcade. Fortunately, both of these versions are no longer able to buy, but if you have a copy on those consoles, you can play it on those consoles if you wish. It was never released on any other console in this way, though. If you want to play Sonic 2 on the 7th generation, you have Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection for PS3 and Xbox 360. Both of them are pretty cheap, and if you have those consoles and you like them and you want to play a bunch of Genesis games but you don't have a Genesis, this is actually a pretty good way to do it because there's a lot of Genesis games on there, including Sonic 1 and 2. If you're a DS lover like I am, there's Sonic Classic Collection, which isn't too expensive of a game. It includes a bunch of the classic Sonic games on it, well, only the main ones. The emulation is not too great, but it's an easy way to do it. Plus, it has a little bit of a save state feature for Sonic 1 and 2, since those games don't feature a save system. It's not the best way to play them, but hey, if you like the DS, it's not too bad of a game to pick up. One of the more unique ways to play Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is on your 3DS with 3D Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which actually adds new features to the game. This version is also included on the Switch, known as the Sega Ages version, which adds the Knuckles to the game. Because you're wondering, this adds a mode called Ring Keeper. It adds 3D, of course. It plays wireless co-op. There's emulation. There's screen changes. There's a supersonic mode, and a bunch of other things like stage select and a save feature. The easy way to play Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is with the Nintendo Switch Online service, the expansion where the Genesis. One of the first games ever released for that was Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Actually, it was surprising there wasn't other Sonic games on there than Sonic 2. Most likely because of Sonic Origins Plus, but if you want to play the original Genesis version of Sonic 2, here you go. The latest and greatest version to play Sonic 2 is on Sonic Origins Plus, which remakes the whole game. It's the mobile version with added features like playing as Amy and other little mini games. Sonic Origins I will be talking about when we get to it, but that'll be way later. And I don't even know because I can't record. I have problems recording certain screens that aren't emulated or on computers, so we will see how I'll get there. But yeah, there's some people have problems with Sonic Origins. Well, like I said, we'll get to that when we get to that. I think it's one of the best ways to play the games, though I do recommend playing on the original versions just to see the difference. But for newcomers, I do recommend playing Sonic Origins over others, at least in my opinion. For 1, 2 CD, and I don't recommend it for 3, actually, believe it or not. But yeah, for 1, 2, and CD, I do recommend Sonic Origins Plus. Sonic the Hedgehog 2. A game that shaped the gaming industry for the better. It showcased that Sonic 1 was not just wasn't just a one-time thing. Sonic was here to stay, and he became a cultural icon with the release of Sonic 2. His game sold like gangbusters, and Sonic was going into other media at the end of 1992 with its comic books, as well as a TV series being initiated at the end of 92 into 93. And yeah, Sonic 2 is great. I don't know much to say about it. People loved it. I mean, why wouldn't you? And it's considered to be one of the best Sonic games of all time for obvious reasons. And let's get to the tier list now, since I had nothing else to say. If you asked me a while ago, I might have put Sonic 2 the A tier. I'm about to playing it multiple times. And this is a game I actually think I get better and better the more you play. It has difficult moments, but I'm able to get past difficult moments with more and more experience. I do think they are a little more challenging for early players. I think it does have a difficulty prob. Most of the game I feel like is pretty easy, but then it gets some really high difficulty spikes, which I'm not too big a fan of. But it doesn't have anything elaborate, so it's not fun to play. If it's fun to get past those challenges, I just wish that some of them weren't so annoying. That Wing Fortress jump I don't even mind the final boss fight. Even the honestly things that would the only two things that really change though when it comes down to it is the Wing Fortress' extreme difficulty and the chemical plants. Some of its more annoying things at the very end of Act Two, or at least push that zone to later in the game. And I think it's perfect. So other than that, I realized that there's really nothing else. There are different moments I actually kind of like. So I have no reason not to put it S tier. Sonic 2 definitely deserves it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. This is the tier list. I'll see you next time where we talk about Sonic 2 8-bit. See you then.